that little person is still in there. And
Mm.
you need to connect to that memory, to the soul of that little person who's still in there, because you're probably going to need to fall in love with your teenager again, because there are times when they're not very lovable. Let's be honest, they're not very likable.
Hi, and welcome to On the Couch with Claire, the podcast where we're discussing relationships, parenting, psychology, life, and health. My name is Claire Rowe. I'm a registered psychologist, and today we're going to be delving into the topic around those creatures that we like to call teenagers. If you have a teenager in your house, or maybe you've got kids that are approaching that difficult tween age, this podcast is the one for you. I'm thrilled to be able to welcome our guest today. It's Dr. Ginni Mansberg. Dr. Ginni is a renowned general practitioner, an author, a television presenter, and she has a passion for supporting families, women's health, and lifestyle medicine. Dr. Ginni has authored several impactful books, including The M Word, How to Thrive in Menopause, and one of my personal favourites, The New Teen Age, which I think is a super practical hand-holding guide for all parents navigating these difficult teenage years with their children. Dr. Ginni provides practical and evidence-based advice, and I love that she makes complex medical information accessible and, most of all, actionable. In today's episode, we're going to get into some of the challenges that parents find when suddenly they wake up and there's a teenager in their house. We have some practical tips and strategies that you can implement today in your family. And we finish off today's episode talking about the importance of women, particularly at this stage of middle age, offering themselves some self-compassion. Let's get into it. Dr. Ginni Mansberg, welcome to the podcast. It is so great to catch up for a chat again.
I know. And it's so nice to catch up when we're not just having a wine and just chatting up in general. So it's very nice to do it.
That's good as well. So let's delve into, we're here to talk about those creatures that we call teenagers. And you've done your time, you've raised a few of these, right? You've come out the other end. And you also are still a practicing GP with families. And so you see this every day of working with families with teenagers. I want to ask, first of all, from what your experience is and what you see, do you think that being a teenager and raising a teenager is harder today than previous generations, or do we need to suck it up a bit?
No, I think it's 100% harder. And I think the little devices that they all have that you can't get rid of, and social media and the sources of their information that you cannot control, is a game changer. And you can see it all around us where, there are movements to try and get social media to only be available to 16-year-olds. We parents are still trying to control everything for our kids. We're not ready to surrender to the inevitability that these kids they're off on their own and they've got access to information, most of it bad, all around us. And I think it's a complete game changer, particularly when you're looking at a generation that has got no idea about social media. And even if we do have social media, ours is so different. Our algorithms are different. We're going to be fed cute kitten videos. It's such a different world. We don't understand it. And we're always terrified of things we don't understand, right? So I think it's changed. I think it has made it much tougher for teenagers as well. I think things are competitive. I think at school, I think getting into the right school is more competitive. We're more competitive in sport. It's just a different world to what we grew up with.
Yeah, I agree. I think for the first half of my career, I kind of, oh no, come on, it's not harder. But absolutely in the last 10 years, I would 100% agree that they also grow up a lot quicker, so much quicker. Childhood seems to be, I think, squashed and increasingly compacted and squashed into far shorter time period than it used to be. The 11-year-olds are not the 11-year-olds that we were when we were 11. And so, yeah, I agree. I think it's harder. And so I like to remind parents of that when they come and see me for assistance. What are you seeing as a GP that parents are most struggling with? Why would parents present to you as they delve into teenage years? What are they coming saying that they are struggling with?
So I would say the number one thing that parents are really worried about that I probably wouldn't be as worried about is time spent on social media or time spent on a device, time spent gaming. For them, there are constant fights around get off your phone, get off the Xbox, and they're really worried, and I think possibly rightfully fearing the worst of what their kids are seeing online. But instead of engaging with them and sort of going, so tell me about what you're seeing, are you seeing anything that you're worried about? They're just trying to shut it down, which is now making parents and kids at war over this. And there's a lot of fighting around time spent gaming, and he does nothing but gaming on the weekend. And so that's what is worrying parents. What I think they possibly should be worried about more is how little time children are spending sleeping. So I think that the statistics are quite grim when it comes to teenagers getting adequate sleep. And we know, because we've got the research, while the research around linking access to social media and poor mental health outcomes is not definite. Like, we know that there is a bit of an association above a certain amount of time spent on a screen with worse mental health. We don't know that the time spent on the screen is causing the poor mental health, or whether poor mental health is driving kids onto their screens. So we're not absolutely sure. So we can't tell people, get your kids off their devices or it's catastrophic. We do know what happens to kids when they don't get enough sleep. And I don't ever hear a parent saying, listen, I'm really worried. She's not falling asleep till 11:30 and she's up at 6 o'clock for school. I never hear anybody worried about that. That's what I'm worried about. So they're the sorts of things. I think parents are also very concerned around eating disorders as well. I think that there's a lot of disordered eating, a lot of poor body image, and kids are often not opening up to their parents about what's going on. They just see what's happening at the dinner table and are freaking out and don't know how to talk to their kids about it. But they're probably broadly the two things is time on devices that they're really angry about and going into battle with their kids about.
Yeah. I'll come back to sleep because we are on a unity ticket there. Like, I could not agree more. And that doesn't matter what age the kid is. And actually, quite frankly, probably for adults too. There's just a complete underestimation of how much sleep we need. So we might pause on that. But yeah, in all those issues, I suppose what you're seeing as a thread between all of them is this inability to connect and communicate on all of those issues, isn't it, between parents and teens, which is not new. I mean, that's kind of what's happened in the past, is we suddenly can't connect with them.
And I think we haven't necessarily had the best role models, right? Because we grew up in an era where it was do as I say because I told you, don't question. There was a lot of very heavy discipline. A lot of us were quite scared of our parents. We're definitely scared of our parents finding out something. And what our parents said went. We didn't argue back. And then when our kids want to advocate for themselves, possibly they're not the best at doing it in a way that I would recommend, for example, in the workplace. But, when they want to try and be a little empowered or taking some advocacy for themselves, we completely freak out because we don't have that model. We don't understand how that happens between a parent and a child. And they're like, how are they speaking to me like that? I am the parent. But they do their block, where often this is happening at a time where women are very short on time. We're working full time because we can't afford not to. We've got mortgages as long as our arms. We're never going to pay them off. We want to do a renovation and all of a sudden we're in the millions. We're not talking about it. My mother said to me yesterday she wants to renovate an entire house for $50,000. I just thought, wow, when's the last time you spoke to a builder? You're not going to get a toilet.
We'll just take that time machine back quite a while there.
Okay. But the realities are that parents are stressed. There's pressure on us to be spending more time with each child individually. We're more wedded to the outcomes of each school exam. My mother wouldn't have had a clue when I even sat a school exam, let alone what the marks were. Like, there's all of this pressure coming in, plus women are often experiencing maybe some perimenopause. Their brains are not dishing up their best selves. So then the kids are sort of getting this rage from mum and like, how dare you, through to massive guilt. And then they cover the kids in praise and reward and kind of maybe overcompensate. And the kids are getting whiplash going, wait, am I in trouble? Have I got nice mum? Have I got demon mum? What the hell's going on? Don't worry, mum. It's happening to everyone. Don't feel bad. This is like all of us. It's happening to all of us. But I think that we haven't had the best model, but we don't get what is going on when the kids are trying to sort of go, no, I'm not getting off my phone, or just ignore us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes, when we're first entering those teenage years, what I see with parents in my clinic is this shock and almost this tinge of grief when certainly some have described seemingly overnight that there's a different person in the house. Like I don't have that little kid who's reaching up to hold my hand anymore and wanting to spend time with me. And it's like, I need to get to know this new person. And it happens seemingly for them in a blink of an eye. It's like, what happened to my little kid? From a medical perspective, is puberty occurring earlier these days?
Yeah, and so a lot of that is to do with, we think, better nutrition so that we're reaching a particular critical threshold weight earlier. And you can see kids are taller. We're all scrawny little things. They are sort of bigger physically, and we think that that's to do with it. There are some theories about there being more daylight hours now than there were, but that's versus a couple hundred years ago. So I'm not sure I'm on board with that one. But yeah, I remember when I was in year 7, I felt like every girl was getting her period in year 7. That's quite late now to get your period in year 7.
Is
it? Most of them are sort of getting their period in year 6 or even year 5 now.
Okay. All right. So it's definitely all, happening earlier, and parents come to me worried a bit about that as well. Okay. What is the difference if we kind of lay some groundwork here before we start to try and connect on a emotional level in a conversation with them? What do we need to know about the changes in the brain? How are teenage brains different to adult brains?
I actually think knowing this is really helpful because it actually helps you to see your child's disconnection from you as a necessary phase of brain development, as opposed to a wholesale rejection of you as a parent and as a human, which is at a time when we're, if you're going through perimenopause, you might be a little bit paranoid and a bit oversensitive anyway. So it's really good to understand this stuff. So what we know is that kids' brains are changing, in different parts of their brains are developing rapidly, and some parts are actually shrinking, so becoming less robust. Mm-hmm. And what everything is designed to do within the brain is to help them connect to their peers and to connect less with their family. And the reason biologically is that in order to have diversity within the tribe, they need to separate from us, their parents, and to go off and to meet a mate and maybe their own tribe, and maybe split off from the tribe and create an allied but new tribe out there. And they do that by having less even awareness of the influences of parents and traditional authority figures, and more awareness of what's going on with their peers. And you can see this in functional MRI machines. We can actually see what's happening. They are more aware, and they'll start to mirror the behaviors of their peers. They're very aware of what their peers are doing, and they can often feel genuinely like their peers are their family. And that can feel so hurtful to hear that them sort of really feel like their friends are their tribe. They'll come back. It's just a necessary phase that they need to go through, because biologically, diversity within the species is really important. Plus, we don't want to keep them infantilized and babied forever. That's not good for their brain development. At some point, they're going to need to get a job. If they have conflict with their boss, if they don't think that something that's happening to them at work is fair, their answer is not to come to you, mum, for you to fix it. Sure, they can come to you to bounce a few ideas off you, but they've got to be able to fix this themselves. They've got to be able to fix life. And so having that independence is critical for their development. It's also critical for you as a parent. You do really want a 2-year-old, 25-year-old, which I hear about in my surgery all the time. When I say, the 30, the 31-year-old, and the 32-year-old are still living at home, they'll never leave home. They've got it too good at home. No, that doesn't mean you're a terrific parent. That does not mean put a medal on you. That means your kids you probably need to kick them out. And they need to go and grow up. And that might mean living in a hovel. We all lived in hovels when we moved out of school. That's what we did. We had a jolly great rat hole in my first apartment, in the floor.
But we loved it too. Maybe not the rat hole, but we loved, I remember with such pride, the makeshift furniture I had in my first place. It was disgusting. I loved it. I was so proud of it.
What kid does that? They've got the luxury at mum and dad's. They've maybe got an ensuite bathroom. Are they really going to move out into some hovel with 15 other grotty students? Probably not. But to a certain extent, are we infantilizing and keeping our kids young? So this period where we're going to pass the baton of competency from us. Because when your child is little, you're the CEO, you're the cleaner, you're the treasurer, you're the time manager, you're their diary keeper. You control every single thing that they see, do, hear, think, want, everything. You're going to pass that baton of competency gradually during the teenage years so that by the time they hit, and it's going to be different for every teenager, but definitely by 18, but ideally sort of by 16, they're really capable of making some good decisions on their own. They're probably going to need to make a few mistakes along the way, but you are going to be the guardrails that are going to come out and come back in as you watch your child make decisions, good and bad. They're all good. They're all good because they all help them get to where they want to be, where they're going to become compassionate, wise, calm, self-controlled, resilient humans because of you, because you're going to help them pass that baton, but don't try and restrict it. Don't try and stop that from happening because you're going to halt their development, and you can actually see what's happening in their brain, how they're going to now be their own person. Great. Really good.
That's a good thing. One of the lines that I repetitively use with people is, or parents of all ages with their kids, is you have 18 years to turn out a fully functioning, independent human being. And that is much longer than any other animal species, right? We take longer than the others to do that. Our children are far more dependent on us for a longer period than other species. But you have 18 years, and whether your child, when they come and see me, is 3, 7, 10, 16, I say time's ticking. You get 18 years, you're halfway there, whatever it is. And I think when we're talking about handing on the baton, and it's a really nice analogy, I think it can occur earlier. I mean, I would argue that there are ways that we overprotect children in their little world that can start. And you can't expect when a teenager arrives in your house on their 13th birthday to say, right, you're independent now, so jump on the bus, go do this. We need to give children these opportunities through their childhood within their little world. You know, my children are early primary school, and if they can physically do something, I will push them to do it. Because we can't expect that independence just to go, okay, well, there you go, you're on your own. So it's this gradual kind of, the guardrails are moving out and out slowly so that we arrive where we want to be on their 18th birthday. We can say, there you go.
And maybe you can bring them in. So they might really tell you that they want to go to a particular party on a Friday night. And the first time that ever happens, you've got your heart in your mouth, right? But assume it's all going to go well. Have a chat to them about, are you worried about anything? Are you concerned about what's going to happen? Help them to sort of be prepared for something that might happen. Somebody might want to be in a room with you on your own and you might feel uncomfortable. What are you going to do with that? Somebody might want to go and get in an Uber to another party in another part of town. What are you going to do about that? So just having those conversations beforehand and telling them that you believe that they've got this. If you don't believe they've got it, then they shouldn't be going, right? But if you do think they're ready, but if they make a really dumb decision and all of a sudden you're picking them up, they're covered in vomit and they've just had their first incident with the Smirnoff virus, I would say it's a good time to go, it was worth a try. I don't think you're quite ready. Do you agree? We're going to bring the guardrails in. Let's try again in another few months. That's not a grounding. That's not a punishment. That's helping them to get to the point where they're going to make a really good decision when they go out on Friday night. Not, right, you're in big punishment now.
Yeah. And what a different way to approach it. I don't know many parents who would approach it in that way. And I think our fear gets the better of us and then we become emotionally impulsive and we go off, as you said. And in hindsight, we go, okay, I shouldn't have done that. But there's such opportunities for connection along the way to say, I'm your cheerleader next to you. I'm not here against you, even if that's how you feel as a teen.
And they do. The teens really do feel like mum and dad are put on this earth to make their life a misery.
Absolutely.
I just hear all the time that everything's unfair, particularly with the I'm not allowed on the social media thing. All my friends are on TikTok, I'm not allowed. And it's all perceived to be persecutory. And there's some bit of connection that's been lost there if they think that.
Yeah. Well, coming back to, this is a question sometimes I'm asked, which I say, go and talk to your GP about this. But coming back to brain development and changes in brain and hormonal changes, do teenagers need any different nutrition or do they need any type of supplements?
No on the supplements, unless their diet is absolutely horrific. And then I'd rather get them eating well rather than going to supplements. There will be some girls who will be iron deficient because periods are often quite heavy for the first couple of years. it takes you at least 1 year, but up to 2 years to get your ovulation sorted and to sort of have a regular cycle. At the 2 year mark, if they're all over the place and still having heavy periods, you've got to think about this. That's not right anymore. But for the first 2 years, they can become quite iron deficient, particularly if they're bleeding a lot. So it might be if your daughter is really tired and she's having really heavy periods and, you know, that you've had to clean the sheets a couple of nights, might be worth getting an iron blood test from your GP. In terms of nutrition, there is no magic formula with a teen, but what I can say is the evidence that is coming out now about the link between highly processed foods, particularly carbohydrate-rich, highly processed foods, and adverse health effects, but particularly adverse mental health effects, it's really overwhelming now. Now, partially it's the lack of nutrients, but partially it's going to be driven as well by their gut microbiome and not feeding adequate nutrients into the gut microbiome. Now, I don't want to freak any parent out because teenagers are often not great eaters. I'm really happy for you if your teenager will tuck into a nice steamed fish and salad dinner. No one I know is even making that, let alone eating it, the kids. But if they are at the tuck shop, and tuck shop's the bane of my life, I can't believe what absolute shit is sold at school canteens.
I wasn't aware. I went to a high school where we had some gold standard healthy canteen, and I just thought that was normal. And my kids came home last week and said, oh, you know, their father would give them some money for the tuck shop. Oh, that's great. What'd you buy? We bought 2 packs of Oreos. I said, does your school sell Oreos? I said, yeah. Yeah, I had no idea.
And really, because I think if you think about it, school tuck shops when we were at school was the mums were all on a roster and cooked reasonably healthy food, right? Well, no mum is going to give up, you know, time to go to the school canteen because she's got to have a job, because she's got to pay the bills. So they can't find parents to do tuck shop anymore. So they're generally outsourced to companies who are looking to drive profits. And these highly processed foods drive the most profits. But what happens is, if you are a mum who is too busy to make lunch, and so you give your kids lunch money, the chances are they don't even have lunch. You know, they're going to spend the whole lot on junk food. I mean, this is not being judgmental. This is just the reality of being a full-time working mum. The kids have gone to fall asleep at 11:30 at night. You can hardly wake them up in the morning because they are exhausted. They're finished. So getting breakfast into them is a bit of a mission. So sometimes you're running out the door and they haven't had breakfast because no one's had time to sit down and have a proper breakfast. So you give them lunch money, it's all rubbish. And then they come home and you might give them a little treat after school because, quite frankly, if you are at full-time work, you know, you going and making them a healthy burger or something like that, like forget that, or even making your own homemade bran loaf or something, it's not going to happen. You're going to open up a packet of Shapes or Tiny Teddies because that's what you've got in you after you've been wrung out by work for the rest of the day. And then dinner will come. And if you are one of the parents who's driving around whatever city or town you're in trying to do after school extracurricular activities in every shade and every flavor, because if your kid doesn't do it, they're going to be the worst at netball, the worst at tennis, the worst at English, the worst at maths, then you're going to be exhausted and your chances of even getting a dinner on the table is very low. So out comes the Uber Eats. And this is not to be accusatory, but what do the kids need? They need real food. They need real food and not the rubbish. How you transition from where life is like at the moment, where you're too busy to get proper food and you're too busy to make lunch and it's just easier to give them lunch money. I'm just telling you, don't expect a decent lunch out of these kids. It's not going to happen. But how you transition, there's a lot of tips I can give you, a lot of tricks I can give you, but at the end of the day, you are going to need to set aside some time. You are. You're going to need to set aside time to feed you and your family, and that is going to mean not collapsing on the couch with Netflix after dinner. I know, I'm sorry.
But it might also mean taking some other things out and trying to make a conscious decision as a parent or as a couple of what the priorities are. Like you said, all their extracurricular activities, or can we take something out? Is it that important that come a Sunday? This is what I find. I go through parents' weeks, and your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we've got swimming, sport, dancing, tutoring, Saturday. And then what do you do on Sunday? Well, we try and keep the kids busy and we take them to a barbecue, or we go down the beach, or like, why? So I'm sure in your week you might be able to look at something and say, we need to actually just reduce the scheduling and use that time.
Well, within fast food, if you have to buy, there will be healthier choices within that. So in most of the supermarkets now, there are ready-made salads, there are ready-made sandwiches, there are healthier options than just saying to them, give them money to the canteen, because I think canteen's going to have any good outcomes.
Okay. And the heavily processed carbohydrates that you said are coming out with so much research about poor
Yeah.
outcomes are exactly what teenagers, I'm just thinking of the cheeseburger at the drive-through, exactly what the teenagers are attracted to.
I mean, it's okay for them to, like, I think Macca's is somewhere where the kids can go and get together as a group of kids and have a reasonably cheap meal, and they're socializing and they're on their own. And sometimes no parent wants to have them at their house, which I completely understand. For everybody, I would urge you to get to know the children and get to know their parents, and having it at your house might be extremely inconvenient, but wow, it'll save you. I can't tell you how many umpteen fears, because when you can't find your kid, you can ring somebody else. When your kid tells you something that you're a bit worried about, you can bounce it off one of the other parents. It is really good for your kid to know that you know all the other families at school, whatever. But if it has to be at Macca's, that's okay. That's a once a week thing. My concern is when all they're eating is junk food, or 50% of what they're eating, or even a third. It's not great for them.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is there's no specific nutritional needs beyond they just need real food, which don't we all? This is great for the whole family. This isn't a teenage year specific. No supplements in particular, apart from the fact that maybe we're looking at iron for girls, and if their diet's particularly bad, talk to a GP. Let's come back to sleep. Now, for me, I routinely ask about sleep, and I'm very hesitant to intervene with behavioral or emotional problems if sleep is disastrous, because any intervention I do is pointless anyway. Even if lack of sleep is not the cause of the psychological problem, my intervention isn't going to work because you're all at the end of your tether and can't implement it anyway. So I send people away. You have to fix that up first. But I think there's a real shift in what parents consider good sleep, because sometimes they say, how's sleep with your child? Yeah, it's good. Tell me more about that. Well, they gave me all these details, and in the end I say, that's terrible. That's actually terrible sleep. How late they are, whether they're on screens, and whether they're, mouth breathing, or whether for younger kids they're in and out of the parents' bed, or some type of disruption. Do you find that parents in a generation or two have shifted how much sleep kids need and the quality of sleep?
I think what research has absolutely confirmed, and absolutely reflects what I see in my surgery and what you're seeing, is that parents often think the sleep is fine. Research tells us that very few parents, if any, acknowledge or even know that their kids are not getting enough sleep, particularly teenagers. And there's a perception that if we get 7 hours of sleep, that will be perfect for a teenager. The reality is that they need 9 to up to 9.5 hours per night, and that there's a sleep debt that accumulates. And so that often by the weekend they're a mess. And by the time we see them with mental health issues, I can't diagnose you with anxiety. I certainly can diagnose you with sleep deprivation. That's 100% what I can do. But I think nobody takes sleep seriously. And the studies show that doctors don't ask about it. And when I was writing The New Teenage, I interviewed Dr Chris Seaton, who's a sleep specialist at Westmead, at Children's Hospital at Westmead. And he was saying that he sees lots of kids with disordered sleep, and many of them have been to a psychologist for years. And he says very few of them are even being asked by their psychologist about sleep at all. Very few, if any. It's like the black hole. And of course, I know you would be all over this because you're a very evidence-based psychologist, but it is the black hole of health for children, is this whole issue of sleep. And in case anybody is not sure, the lack of sleep that we are talking about here, not only if I don't have enough sleep, I feel anxious. And I'm somebody who I can honestly say does not ever get anxiety. But if I've had enough nights without sleep, I'm a mess. I can feel my heart rate goes up. I can feel that shallow breathing. You can put your hand on your chest and actually feel that you're doing this rapid, shallow breathing. It's not adequate to get oxygen to your brain. I can feel myself if I haven't had enough sleep. I can feel my body adapt. But if you think about chronic lack of sleep, it's linked to everything from acne to a range of mental health conditions, to doing and saying bad shit on the internet, on TikTok, making mean comments on each other's posts on TikTok, to bad academic performance, bad sports performance, eating disorders, suicidal thoughts, suicidal behavior, drug and alcohol abuse, smoking, bad decisions across the board. This is a global problem, that gut issues. It is everything.
Goes through everything.
Teenager. And if we don't deal with that first, number one, we're missing the mark. And I don't even want to have a conversation about the iPad. I know what you're saying, and we can show you some of the research around exactly what happens to kids' brains when they're on social media. They're seeing a lot of stuff we'd prefer they didn't see, but I don't know that the answer is always to take the iPad away. I think the answer is to have a good connection with your teen so that if they see stuff that worries them, that you can talk about it. You can have discussions about it so that they can safely use their devices rather than you taking control and saying, I am taking this away from you. And we can talk more about how you manage that conversation. But number one, get them to have enough sleep. Now, yeah, that is going to require them to not have their devices in the room. So that includes their laptop. And the reason why there's no point taking away the iPad is because they all have a laptop, because that's what schools say they have to have from quite early. They're all connected, and the laptops will allow them to do VPNs, and they're going to get onto social media. So if you think that the school's controls that they're stuck on that laptop are adequate, they're not. They'll get around them. It'll take them about 3 seconds to get onto TikTok. So don't worry about that. They have devices. But what I think is really important is that the entire family goes tech-free from at the absolute latest 9 o'clock, and for earlier teens, so from your tween age, I'd say 8 o'clock. And I would say you too. You don't get to say to your kids, you're all going off your devices, but I'm going to sit here and not answer you because I'm scrolling through a funny cat video and I didn't hear you. Why doesn't the entire family go screen-free, other than a family movie night or something like that? That's nice. But everyone puts their personal devices in the laundry or in the pantry or whatever it is, and everybody does it from 8 or 9 o'clock at night, according to the age of the youngest child. And then when you think your kid is slightly older, and I think it is important to differentiate between the 11-year-old and the 14-year-old, for example, then they can, by negotiation, by having a discussion with you, not unilaterally going, right, you've turned 15, I'm going to allow you to have your laptop till 9, by mutual discussion and family discussion so that everybody's on board, then you'll change that. But I think it's really important to get the devices away from the room. Now, I know what they're going to say to you, because I hear this 7 days a week. Oh, but how am I going to wake up in the morning? I need my alarm. Okay, you do need your alarm. And you can go down to Harvey Norman, or you can go down to Dick Smith. They actually exist. Alarm clocks.
You can get it on Amazon one day delivery, delivered the next morning. I have a link I send my patients, and there you go.
Cheap ass. The second thing that's going to happen, and this is particularly true of girls, and this is really hard for mums to understand, is girls are highly connected. So if you think about when we were teenagers, you got to see your girlfriends on the bus on the way to school, on the walk and bus on the way home from school. So only the ones who lived near you, right? And at school. If we wanted to talk to our friends after hours, we had to ring a landline from our landline. I don't know about you, but we had one phone. It was in the lounge room, so everybody could hear. Sometimes it was a very long cord and you'd go and sit in a cupboard somewhere. But the reality was everybody else wanted to use the phone too. You were not going to have a 1-hour chat with your girlfriend. These days, the girls in particular, more than the boys, are very, very connected. And these girls feel like they need to be there for their friends. And there's always somebody having a crisis, often with their parents, sometimes with a boy. Whatever it is, there's a crisis that's happening. And you feel like, I have to be there for her. This is a lot to put on the shoulders of your 14-year-old daughter, the emotional well-being of another child. If that child is potentially suicidal and your daughter is close to hysterical, thinking that she's going to cause that, that is too big for your daughter to deal with. She can't deal with it. And you need to be the cow that intervenes. If you need to, you can talk to the school with your daughter's permission. You can talk to her mum with your daughter's permission, or you can give her the counselling she needs. Your daughter is not a psychologist, and it is utterly inappropriate for her to need to have the phone next to her bed in case the 1 o'clock phone call comes in because Sally's had another fight with her mum. Your daughter is not the person to be handling this, and we need, as a group of parents, to stop this. Phones go away.
I'm just thinking, hallelujah, I could not agree more. And I love when you're talking about it, that collaborative aspect, though, of when you do these things and implement these things. And what I say to parents, and I have kind of a contract that I help draw up when kids first get mobile phones with parents and children, and they both sign it and they both get copies of it. And then it also goes into the details of what happens if the contract is broken. So we already pre-plan and we already decide this is what's going to happen. So we all know. But the other thing I tell parents is that your child may only have one app or not be using it much when you hand it to them at the year 7 age. But if you don't start then, if you have that phone in that bedroom, then try taking it off the 15-year-old 4 years later. It won't happen. Well, it will be a hell of a lot harder. And I think sometimes phones are given without all that pre-work done. And I say, right, when are we going to give a phone? Let's start thinking about it in the months leading up to it, about what the boundaries are and talking to the child about it, rather than what I find is it's given on the birthday or at Christmas and it's unboxed and it's turned on. And then parents are going, oh, yeah, I really need to get onto that. I really need to set the rules. We haven't really done that yet. Look, they've just got it. So we'll let it go a week or two. And it just never happens.
Or grandma gave the phone.
So
parents
yes.
like, I don't have a right because it's her phone. So I am going to recommend this, which is my parenting Bible. So it's called The Blessing of the Skinned Knee by Wendy Mogul. You'll need to get it secondhand off Amazon. But that was my life-changing, oh my goodness, moment when I read that book. So it is very religious. So just for anybody who hates religion, it's probably going to annoy you. So just warning. But the reason why she's into religion is because of gratitude associated with happiness. So she's very blessings and saying grace is around being grateful for food, which not very long ago our grandparents didn't necessarily have the food options that we have.
We know gratitude is a great practice, religious or not. Gratitude is a great practice connected with mental health and a great practice to teach children.
So if you can get through all the religious stuff in the book, if you're not, I mean, for me, it kind of works, but I understand. But what she talks about is what your children are entitled to. If you give birth, what you owe your children is the best food you can afford, the best education, healthcare that you can afford, safety. Like if you can provide a safe room over their head, free from physical violence, like if you're in a war zone, you owe it to your children to try and get them out of there. These are the sorts of things that you owe to your children. Everything else, what you owe them is an opportunity to earn it. So in other words, there were no screens when she wrote this book. This was all about TV time, sleepover with friends, birthday party, going to the movies with a friend, that sort of thing. What you should give your children is an opportunity to earn it, and then it's on them. So let's say, for example, you say, I'm going to get an Xbox, and in order to get half an hour a day on the Xbox, all you need to do is to make your bed and come for dinner when I call you. I don't want to have to call you twice. Okay? And then if you have to call them twice, you go, okay, that's got nothing to do with me. That was your decision.
Totally.
So back on them. Here, you can have an extra half an hour on the Xbox on the weekend, and all you need to do is, I just want the floor of your room cleaned, everything off the floor, in the cupboards. You do that, you get an extra half an hour on the Xbox. Then on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock when they surface, you can go, do you want that extra half an hour on the Xbox? Because just a reminder, your floor is not getting you there. And then either they make a good decision or they don't make a good decision, but they can't put it back on you. So you're not withdrawing something to which they are entitled. They have chosen not to take up the opportunity that you have given them to earn extra things that they want. And she's very strong on that. It's always their decision. You want to do this, great. You don't want to do this, that's okay. Up to you, completely up to you. You want to clean your room, and there's no rules about what the trade-offs are. But once you make that contract, because I love the contract with a mobile phone, I think it should be in every house. I think a copy should be given to everybody, and I think there should be a section of the fridge where these things are put on the fridge in case you need a reminder. This is not about me being your punisher. I'm not. This is about you not making great decisions. Up to you.
Absolutely.
And then instead of you being the baddie, you are there to help them make the good decisions. You're even going to remind them, honey, dinner and a reminder, Xbox. Okay? Do they come or do they not come?
Up to them.
Up to them.
Up to
and
them.
I love the empowerment of it. And this can start early. There is no child who is entitled to toys. There is no child who is entitled. You're giving them a lot of entitlements there. Good food, good education, good access to a clean home or a clean bathroom, whatever it is, great healthcare, braces if they need them. You're going to give that to them for free. They don't have any other contractual obligation on their part. That's very generous. But now it's on them to get the stuff that they want. And it's never too late to implement this. It's never too late.
I love it because it repositions the parent in this emotionally a bit more of a detached way. And I always tell parents when they come with what they're describing as difficult or problematic behavior, as we need to make the behavior the kid's problem, not your problem. Always saying that this is far more your problem than their problem. They're not really suffering at all from this behavior. So yeah, it's twisting that around or turning it around so that you can, as you said, say, I don't mind whatever decision you make, like come or don't come, I don't mind, but I'm letting you know that if you choose this, this is what's going to happen. If you choose this, this is what's going to happen. And
don't make it up on the fly.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I'm very clear from the beginning. So the minute you buy the Xbox or the minute you buy the iPad, it comes with certain rules. It's here, you can have it if. And they need to understand that right from the beginning. But also then you're their collaborator. You're their team player. You're on their team because you want them to have Xbox. You want them to have time on the iPad. And then what I'd probably go is, I think if any parent has seen Grand Theft Auto, it's a really awful game. So you're stealing cars. It's all crime-ridden. It's encouraging kids to partake in crime. Turns out it's not. Turns out that they don't actually take that seriously. But, if you get enough points, you can go and bang a hooker. Like, it's just dreadful game. And there's a lot of temptation from parents to say, you are not playing that game. That is absolutely not going to happen. I would encourage parents instead to say, hey, can you teach me how to play this game? Sit next to them and go, okay, this seems really shit to me, but what do you like about it? Like, do you not think it's weird that you get points and you get to go bang a hooker? And they'll probably go, oh, God. Yeah, it's just in a game. It's just, they can really reassure you if you let them be your teacher. And so what I would really encourage parents to do, not for a 7-year-old, of course, there's a rule, they've got to hold your hand when they cross the road. That's for their own safety. Your job is to keep them safe. But in terms of games, in terms of social media, in terms of giving them time on the Xbox, rather than, again, trying to control everything, why don't you tell them that you're their biggest fan? But I'd love to understand. You obviously know something I don't know. Oh, this seems weird to me. Tell me about it. And it's going to change the conversation. It's so much better.
So much better. Love it. Absolutely love it. Ginny, I want to just briefly change topic for a minute, particularly to the parents of teenage girls or tween girls. I cannot let you go without broaching this topic. I sit with children regularly in my work, and I have noticed of the last 2 to 3 years, 10, 11-year-old girls looking at me, telling me, Claire, you really should get some retinol and a serum and a toner, and you really need this moisturizer with this active ingredient. And they know so much. I'm there going, actually doesn't sound too bad. I need to write this down. But then I'm looking at them going, honey, are you doing this? Is this? Yeah. And it's, these mothers come in and say they have this practice. It's almost like this ritual, and they have 10 products lined up, no joke. First of all, is that what you're seeing? And I know as someone who is the co-founder of a skincare brand that I wholeheartedly trust because it's evidence-based, what is going on here with our young tweens in skincare?
So I think that Mecca and Sephora are just where these kids want to be. That's all they want for their birthdays is vouchers to Mecca and Sephora. They want to go there, and the parents are going, well, I don't know, maybe this is right. But products that they want, because they're in a very consumer society, are very expensive. So I think,
yeah, I mean, these are like $60 moisturizers. And so I look at this
and the rest,
who is giving the money to these children to buy these products that are wrapped up in candy colored, pastel, lovely, Instagram worthy packaging? But who is handing over this money? The parents. I mean, this is, my mind just boggles with this.
So I think that parents who work often feel like they're not adequately giving enough to their children, and particularly when they're at the end of their rope and might shout at their kids and then they feel really guilty. And that's just normal parenting right now. So don't feel guilty or ashamed. This is just parenting in the 21st century. It's really tough right now. And with the cost of living crisis, there's a lot of stress to go around. And then when your kids say that everybody has a retinol serum, like everybody has an iPhone, remember that when nobody had a little Nokia phone with a snake game on it anymore. It was everybody has an iPhone. You can understandably want to support your children and you can lose sight of what's going on. So I think the first thing to say is it is great that your kids want to get into managing their skin. And if they can get into a sunscreen every single day that is a broad spectrum sunscreen, because the sun's UVA for aging rays are there 7 days a week, 365 days a year, from sun up to sundown, in summer, winter, they go through glass. Your kids will thank you if they get onto a sunscreen every single day for the rest of their lives. They will not have the wrinkles and the fine lines that we all have because none of us did that, right? So I think that is great.
Okay.
And also, if they can get used to cleansing their skin and not using just a soap bar, again, that's great.
Good habit. Okay.
Okay. What else do they need? Retinol at age 15. If they've got acne, maybe at age 11, unless they've got acne, absolutely no evidence. And is there any evidence that it's an anti-aging thing at age 11? No. Do they need to have collagen being built? They've got plenty of collagen. Their collagen-making cells, those fibroblasts, are maxed out. They're making so much collagen, they're fine. Do they need all the other ingredients? No. But I think what we can do is go, I love that you are so aware of this. I love your expertise. I love that you are getting great knowledge in this. Come and help teach me. Tell me what I should be getting. At 12 or 13, if your daughter has her Christmas money, or if she's got a job babysitting, or if she's got her first Macca's job, and that's what she chooses to put her money towards, and she's saving up, I think the idea of managing money is quite good, and she's possibly going to learn that retinol burns sensitive skin. She's going to learn that the hard way. That's okay. I wouldn't discourage it, and I wouldn't freak out. I've seen a lot of magazine articles about how harmful retinol is for tweens. There's no evidence that it's harmful. It can burn your skin. It can definitely give you a bit of a retinol burn. They can recover from that. It doesn't cause any permanent damage or anything like that. Okay. And I think the idea of spending and saving, is it any different to a Pokemon card? It's a bit more expensive, but again, she's going to need to save much harder. And having a good understanding of money is good for teens. And her focusing on prevention with a sunscreen, we are very happy. I'm sure she'll grow out of it very soon. And instead, she's going to want to go onto the Fenty, palettes of eyeshadow and whatever. I think we can catastrophize this stuff a little bit too much. I would just have a bit of fun with it, and you have to worry about it too much. It's a fad.
That is really reassuring. No, that's really, really great. And redirecting it too, again, like every other topic, right? There's opportunity there for connection, for conversation. Come and teach me, come and tell me what I love that you have all this knowledge. It's more than I have. And let's go into the store together. And yeah, I agree in the sense of it's wonderful that you're taking care of your skin. And if we can try and direct them to that basic routine of cleansing and a sunscreen every single day, brilliant. But also if that's what they've chosen, that's a very different scenario. If that's what they've chosen to work hard to get their money to save up to buy a product, then there's a whole different lesson there, isn't there?
I don't know what you saved up for, but when I'm not 11 or 12, but certainly at 14 or 15, I mean, I saved for ages for a Boy George ticket or for a Wham concert, and it was all over in a night. And my mother thought that was a terrible waste of money. And to a certain extent, I agree, but I was so proud because I saved up and I did what I wanted to do. And when I went to the Wham concert, I wore a Choose Life t-shirt that, again, I saved up for. And I think that it's a really nice thing for kids to save their money for something that they really want, and that feeling of being able to purchase something that they've worked hard for will actually help them have conversations with you that are really helpful. I think there's a lot of conversations around money, particularly in a cost of living crisis, where parents freak their kids out about how much everything costs. And that can particularly happen, unfortunately, for single mums, because it is tougher for single mums, but often there's a competition with who's paying for what. And I really don't think the kids need to hear those conversations. They're not helpful. And I can't tell you how many kids I see who are literally terrified of being homeless or that there's not enough food to eat because of the conversations around money. If dad doesn't chip in for the braces, I wouldn't be chatting about that with the kids. But I think at the same time, helpful conversations around money, around saving and having to miss out on some things in order to have other things, never too early to learn that stuff. So if it's spending on a niacinamide serum, next year it might be an eye palette, whatever.
Okay. All right. Just to finish off, I just want to have some acknowledgement or your experiences of women who come into your practice who are what I call, and I'm sure others do, that sandwich generation. And that is, and I have very close girlfriends experiencing this, that they reach that period in their life, middle age, that comes with its own difficulties for women. And perhaps their career prospects are maybe even increasing at this point. They don't have children that are attached to them anymore. The timeout step and the nappies are well behind them. They're thinking, oh, this could really be a very different chapter of my life. And boom, they're hit with teenagers' hormones flying around. And at the same time, they often hit with aging parents, and they find themselves with this increased mental load to be that generation in between, I find, of aging parents and their health difficulties and running between them and where their teen is and making sure they check in with the teen and trying to be on top of all that. Is that what you're seeing in your practice?
100%. I always say menopause comes at the wrong time of your life. And so some people will fly through menopause. It's so easy. But there are other women, 75% get some sort of hot flushes. 1 in 3 of those find them unbearable. Sometimes it's just that you're so hot at night you don't sleep. And then there's that sleep deprivation. We've already spoken about how bad that is for kids. It is equally bad for mums. You're often a mummager at work. We now have all the millennials and Gen Zs who are pouring their hearts out to you when they break up with their partners or having career crises and really feeling like the workplace is not there for them and that kind of thing. And you're thinking, oh my God, I just did this job when I was your age and didn't bitch about it. So you're a mummager. Then your mum who used to be who you went to help out with the kids, now you're now needing to help her. And you've got your time is being split and your emotional energy is just being split in so many directions. And I can't tell you how many women I see who don't meet the criteria for depression or anxiety, but what they do tell me is, I just want to get in the car and drive off. Like I just don't want to come home. It's too hard. And what I would say to you is, if you are experiencing menopause symptoms at the same time, we have great fixes for that. So don't try and soldier on with Codral for menopause. It doesn't work. Rather, go to your GP and let's get that conversation started. And then I would also say that if things are getting on top of you and you are in this constant cycle of doing your block and feeling guilty and ashamed, and you are not directing, we haven't even spoken about self-compassion and all the Kristen Neff stuff, but very few women that I see have any self-compassion whatsoever, but they just have this cycle of shame and remorse and then losing their shit again. If you are there and you feel like this is not what I dreamed of when I was in my teens and I thought about being a mom and being a career woman and it hasn't quite worked out the way you want, let's check in with your GP and let's see whether you meet the criteria that would allow you to create, for your GP to create a mental health care plan for you to get help. And so many people that I say, well, what would she say? And what's the point of me seeing a psychologist? What would she say? My answer is, don't you worry about that. She knows what she's doing. You don't need to work out what she's going to say and preempt all the answers and map the whole thing out in your head and have it all organized and you in tight control of everything. Release control. Go with the process. The second thing that I'm going to say is, in the same way that you don't go to the gym and go, well, that didn't work. That didn't work. I'm still overweight or I'm not fit. I couldn't run a marathon. I went last week and it didn't work. We all know that's dumb. Going to a psychologist, the first couple of sessions are they're going to be getting to know you, what's happening in your head, and then it's going to come out the therapeutic stuff. And you're going to have exercises to do at home. And it is a marathon, not a sprint. So I would beg anybody. I know sometimes, you've got to kiss a few frogs to meet your handsome prince, but please just give the frog a couple more kisses, because I think that Rome wasn't built in a day, and you've got to trust the process a little bit. But if this life is not what you thought it was going to be, and if you don't like the person you are, if you don't like the way life has turned out for you, don't take that lying down. Don't give up. You are too important to give up on. Your kids, your partner. This is peak age for divorce as well. Don't give up and walk away. Get the help you need. Welcome help into your life, because it can make the difference between having an amazing second half and having a second half that you frankly don't want to be part of. And I just see this every day, and I just want to urge people to accept help and accept compassion.
I love that. I love the message that you don't have to put up, and that applies to so many areas of life, even when we're talking to parents of younger children, and seemingly this idea that, well, isn't that just parenting for everyone? That everyone's miserable and everyone's screaming at each other and everyone's tired. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. And don't just accept and put up with that if that's a feeling you have. And I think I can certainly relate in friends and clients, patients that I see, of that feeling where they just say, I don't know, but I just want to run away. I don't know how else to describe it. I want to run away. I don't want to die. I'm not suicidal, but
I just don't want this. I don't want this.
Yeah.
I don't drive into my garage every night after a day from work and go, home, my family, this is where I'm happy. Like, sorry, it should be. I don't want to put too much pressure on you out there, but I want every person coming home at the end of the day of work and going, I'm in my home. And I also don't want you to get that feeling in the pit of your stomach about work either. Like, sometimes it's interpersonal stuff that somebody can coach you through. So I just know this is not, yes, everybody feels like you do, so don't feel bad about it. I hear this every single day, but there's so much you can do if you let people in to help you. No, you are not the superhero. And in the same way that your 14-year-old can't be the psychologist for her very unwell friend, you can't be your own psychologist. You can't do this. Well, you've tried. How's that working for you? Let people in, let them help you. But what I would do is maybe go and listen to a couple of Kristen Neff YouTube videos or podcasts, just to accept self-compassion into your life, just to direct some of the compassion that you ladle out all over the show to everybody else. If you can just let some of that direct to you, we know that there are amazing outcomes in terms of cardiovascular health, preventing dementia, preventing a whole raft of illnesses, but it will allow you to accept help because you'll believe that you deserve it. And I would just urge to start there.
And it's something that we know women are not great at that. And we have this kind of self-care words bandied around sometimes, but sometimes I kind of think they're all a bit fluff. And it's about self-compassion to oneself is allowing not just the acceptance that I don't have to have it all neatly bound up and in control of everything. And I can put down some balls at times, and I can delegate, and I can let people in to help. And I always say, and if that person doesn't help, that professional, we'll find someone else, and then we'll find someone else. Or if I can't help you, then I'll look for the other person that will help you. And we will just keep looking until we do make a change and create a life where you are happier.
Absolutely. Like, amen to that. So yeah, just if you're feeling like having teenagers is not the joy that you thought it would be, and that's a real shame, because you started, Claire, this whole podcast talking about you lost that little person who slept in your arms or looked at you with those adoring eyes, just thought you were the most perfect thing in the world. They're still there. That little person is still in there. And you need to connect to that memory, to the soul of that little person who's still in there, because you're probably going to need to fall in love with your teenager again, because there are times when they're not very lovable. Let's be honest, they're not very likable, particularly when they're pushing you away.
Sometimes we aren't very lovable.
Correct. So if we can rejoin the dots, re-get that connection, but part of that is going to be allowing yourself to be loved as well. So that self-compassion, it all intertwines.
Dr. Ginni, thank you so much. We could talk forever. I really appreciate it. I love how practical it is. It's actionable. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving up your valuable time and joining me today on the couch. If today's conversation spoke to you, consider sharing the love and send it to someone you know who needs to hear it. Don't forget you can watch this full episode on my YouTube channel. And if you've enjoyed today's conversation, all I ask is that you hit that subscribe button. It helps us to be able to deliver bigger and better content to you absolutely free of charge. If you've got comments or questions about today's episode, head on over and come hang out on Instagram, where you can follow and contact me. Okay, stay curious, stay connected, and join me next time on the couch. Take care. Okay, for those who've made it this far, just remember, even though I am actually a registered and qualified psychologist, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional individual advice.